Ugh. One of my idiot neighbors put their green box out last night, and a raccoon got into it. So there's rotting food all over the fucking street. Anyway, don't put your green box out until the morning. Anyway, so as I mentioned before, I'm part of this group on Facebook called The Liberalists. It was something that's sort of a term that was coined by Sargon of Akkad, and it started a bunch of his supporters off on getting a Facebook page going, an activist discussion group regarding liberal values. Anyway, the membership on that group, it sort of runs the gamut from people who are like, very libertarian to centrist to moderately progressive, but mostly liberal, classic liberal. And I don't know, there was something about guns or the NRA or something, I don't remember, some post, but one of the comments was from somebody who stated that they were really pissed off when they bought their handgun and they found out that they were automatically given membership or made to be members of the NRA. And the guy said, when I found that out, I wanted to punch that gun shop owner in the face because he doesn't want to. He thinks that the NRA is involved in horse shit and ass fuckery or something like that. I don't know. Something along those lines. Anyway, wait a second. You bought a gun and you're opposed to an advocacy group that fights for your right to keep that gun. And, I question his logic. There were a couple other comments to his, but then he came back and he said that there's AR-15 pistols to get around assault weapons bans, and nobody's coming to take my handgun. And I'm like, are you really that obtuse? So I posted, first they came for the AR-15s, and I didn't speak up because I didn't own any AR-15s. I pleaded with the guy to use his mind, think about things, and learn from history. Not equating, the efforts of gun grabbers in the U.S. to Nazis in Germany back in the 1940s, coming for Jews and whatnot. But, if you don't speak up on behalf of people who you share a common interest with, which he should, then there'll be no one to speak up for you when somebody comes for your, something you really care about. That's just a lesson that you've learned from history. If something is valuable to you, you fight to defend it, even if nobody's coming at you directly. That's why people have come out in support of this Count Dankula, even if they didn't find his joke very funny. Speaking of which, you probably read the news by now. He was found guilty, and then he was sentenced on the 21st. And the sentence was an 800-pound fine, which I think works out to about $1,100 or $1,200 US, or something along those lines. I'm not sure. So a GoFundMe page was started, and within a day, he had over 100,000 pounds in support. So good for him. He's going to appeal it, which is good. But the point is, even if you thought that his joke was offensive, you should be standing in defense of him, because an attack on his right to speak is an attack on everyone's right to speak. And this speaks to the larger issue of the tactics of the left and the tactics of progressives and, neoliberals, which I think is a good term, because neoliberals bear no resemblance to classic liberals. And they're vilifying of Kanye West. Kanye West, I guess, recently found some videos or heard Candace Owens speak. Candace Owens is the YouTuber who sort of exploded on the scene with Red Pill Black when she started talking to, you know, the African American community about get off the Democrat plantation, you know, stop supporting Democrats and policies that put you in servitude to the government, and start making the decisions that are going to make your life better. Kanye West came out and said something along the lines of, "I really like how Candace Owens thinks," and people, you know, jumped all over him, right? Well, I don't know very much about Kanye West, but my understanding is he's not the kind of guy to ignore controversy and sort of jumps headlong into it. So he then came out in full support of Donald Trump, and people started piling on him even more. And now he's just been, you know, hamming it up on Twitter with pictures of him with his MAGA hat on, and he got a MAGA hat signed by Trump, I guess. Anyway, but the people in Hollywood, people on the left, celebrities of the left-leaning persuasion, jumped all over him and are now calling him, you know, an alt-right spokesperson. And it's weird, you know, their tactic seems to be just anybody they disagree with label as a Nazi, label as alt-right. And that's not going to work for them, right? This is the kind of shit that lost Hillary the election. Smearing your ideological opponents, smearing people you disagree with, you know, these terrible, terrible epithets, right? These terrible labels of racist, alt-right, Nazi, white supremacist, white nationalist, whatever, right? And Jordan Peterson was on Bill Maher last week, I guess last Friday or whatever. Whenever his show airs, I think it's Fridays. I don't watch it. And at one point he asked them the question, he says, like, he's a Canadian, and he framed it from that perspective. He's like, I'm an outsider, and looking at this, I don't understand, you know, what it is you want to accomplish with the divisive rhetoric. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. Like, what do you think will happen if you manage to impeach Trump or get rid of Trump? What do you think those people who supported him are going to do? He says you have to respect the people who voted for him. You have to give them respect. They're not just all a bunch of, you know, rednecks and morons. Some of them have very legitimate reasons for supporting him and not supporting Hillary Clinton. And I've said this before, this wasn't Donald Trump's election to win, it was Hillary Clinton's election to lose. But that being said, as soon as he made his announcement and as soon as he appeared in that first debate, I knew he was going to win. I'm like, oh, that guy's going to win this fucking thing. And I could tell because he was speaking to this group of people where things were being not addressed. Subjects weren't being addressed. And he was the only one addressing them. I don't know if you can thank Steve Bannon for all that, for his, you know, economic nationalism platform and his you know, nationalism v. globalism position, or how much of that is genuine Trump. My thought is that it is genuine Trump, because if you look back on, you know, 30 years of footage of him talking to people, Oprah Winfrey, Donahue, what have you, he seems very pro-America, very pro-capitalism, very pro-American way. So, and he's not an idiot by any stretch. I know his opponents would just love to tar him as an idiot and insane and unhinged and what have you. But again, they do that to their own detriment, because if they're dismissive of his voters and they're dismissive of him and they're dismissive, they just think that, you know, his election was a fluke, and they approach the midterms and they approach the 2020 election with that in mind, they're gonna lose again. And I addressed this in my video, the re-election of Donald J. Trump. Everyone I talk to, who, you know, I'll talk about a friend of mine. She loves going to the United States. she would go to Florida just about every year, or almost every year, every other year, and go to Universal Studios because she's a big Harry Potter fan, so she likes to go to the, the Wizarding World thing, right? And it was almost like a tradition. Every year, we would go there, and we would go with them, because my wife and we kind of like Harry Potter too. But anyway, so I found out the other day that she's boycotting the United States because of the election of Donald Trump. She's not going to go to the United States because Donald Trump got elected. And so I said to her, what, you're not going to go to the United States for another 7 years? She's like, oh, please, he's not going to last that long. I'm like, well, who's going to go up against him in 2020? Who do you think they have that can unseat him? And she said, I don't think he's even going to last that long. They're still counting on this impeachment thing. They're still counting on him being found guilty of Russian collusion and him being impeached. They're counting on the Democrats winning in 2018 and taking over the House and impeaching him. But they can't just impeach him because they don't like him. They can't impeach him because he's vulgar. You know, there's got to be a legitimate reason. And again, back to Jordan Peterson's position or question. What do you think will happen if you impeach him? He was rightfully elected, and he still has massive support from his base. Despite, things he's done that maybe disappoint them. Like the actions in Syria. Like, sort of being slow on the wall. Like talking about certain things like bump stock ban. Like, I don't know, just little missteps and failures here and there. He still has massive support. And now he's got support from Kanye West, which I think he had all along. But he's got support from people, in the African American community. And I may have said this before in a previous video, I don't know. I know I've talked to my friends about it, but I predict that Donald Trump is going to get more of the African American vote in the 2020 election than he did in the 2016 election, which again was higher than Mitt Romney and higher than John McCain. Now, that being said, those two are going up against Barack Obama, so getting higher than them in support from African Americans is not, too surprising. But I could see him getting the support of the African American community higher than any Republican ever. Maybe he's already done that. I don't know, but it's just his economic policies and this narrative of African Americans stop relying on government to lift you out of poverty, or not even lift you out of poverty, just maintain your life. Which for many African Americans who are on the lower income scale, that's a reality. His idea of, empowering entrepreneurs and empowering businesses to hire people, my understanding is it's paying off. I don't pay too close attention to the economics of the United States, but I see a lot of headlines saying, GDP growth, unemployment rate being lowest ever, labor participation rate being highest ever, and all these sorts of things. So, anyway, I guess the main point is, don't discount your ideological opponents as being stupid. And I think this is a failing on the part of Democrats more and the left more than the right. Although there are people in the right and Republicans who just look at Democrats and the left as being crazy or, utopians, and again, you can't be so dismissive of your ideological opponent that you paint them with the brush of just being out of touch or idiotic. But again, I see it more on the left vilifying the right. And maybe it's because they lost. Maybe it's because that's what they need. But long term, it's a failing strategy, and they're not going to win in 2020. And I don't believe they're going to win in 2018. They're counting on it. They think everything was a fluke in 2016. In that sense, they're out of touch. They don't know what happened, and I don't think they've learned the lesson. Who knows? We'll see. Anyway, oh, that's a long video. It's like 15 minutes. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.